I feel a bit of irony because I will not talk to you about job markets and working in the video game industry. And actually I want to tell you about what I believe is the unsuspected transformative power of gaming. Because besides HR, I'm very much committed to the ecological transition. So this is more the topic of tonight. So, So I entered the video game industry in 2008, and when I started, honestly, there's nothing wrong about that, but it was mainly an industry for young white males playing hardcore games, like such as Call of Duty. I think that's the 2008 version there. And since then, the audience has expanded so much. You know, whatever you come from, your age, your race, your social background, there really is a game for everybody. There's games for everyone, literally. And if I believe I understood well the demos that are coming later on, that really is for everybody. So that's really cool. So in the process, also video game has become the most important cultural industry. It is way ahead of movie industry, the music industry, the book industry. It's weighs a lot more. And that's significant. And for me, it is not so surprising after all, because video games allow something that movies and books can't do. They allow to immerse people in worlds, to fully experience stories, to make decisions and to see the consequences of that. They allow also to learn, to experiment, to be challenged in a fun, but also in a safe way. And generally speaking, what is nevertheless common with book and movies is that it allows also to maybe discover different point of views or to even change your own perspective. You know, who hasn't read a book or seen a movie thinking, wow, actually, now I see things differently. Well, video game can do that too. And so, and that's all super powerful, really, that's super powerful. And I haven't switched to the next slide, so I have, I think, too many things to do between. So I will have to choose my battles here. So I'm going to illustrate that idea, that's how powerful it can be with this game called Never Alone. That's from 2014, developed by Upper One Games. It's a puzzle platform adventure game, sorry I'm reading my notes because I don't know everything by heart. And what's super interesting about this game is that it is showcasing the Inuit culture from up North American continent. And on top of that, it is narrated in Inuit language. Okay, so really niche. And the story is told from the perspective of the Inuit people. It talks about the interdependence between humans and the natural world. The topic that is really core at the transition. And it's a big gamble, you know? and what's even more special about it is that they co-produced it and worked closely with 36 Alaska Native elders, storytellers and community members to make sure they remain really authentic to the culture. So guess what? This game reached 15 million players and it won a BAFTA, a Peabody Award, and is even featured in a permanent collection of the New York Museum of Art, of Modern Art. That's quite something, no? So for me that's a very inspiring example of what a game can do, to talk about ecology and to align us with what's ahead of us. But what I find really interesting is that they really work on the perspective, because part of the team, they are US American, and obviously you can't tell a story about Inuit from your own perspective. And that brings me to my message maybe for us tonight. Yes, is that any work of fiction is the projection of the creator's worldviews, belief, norms and values they subscribe to. So when you make a game, you project what you believe into. And it's all cool, but the question is then, where do you stand in your own transition? And of course, it's not about being perfect to then make a video game about aligned with this transition, of course not. But I think it's easier to guide people when you are old, you have yourself studied your own transition. So don't, block yourself from doing it, but it's just being aware of maybe it's a good thing to talk to other people, to maybe research a bit, maybe to collaborate with others that can also enlighten you in the process. I want to talk about, the fact that talking about transition is also talking about us people changing. And the change for humans is super difficult. It is not natural, and we actually kind of push back. And it's sometimes the process to get there is not intuitive. And it's a little bit harsh to put forward Final Fantasy VII as an example of not what to do, because to be fair, I think they generally try to do a work that is necessary, also to criticize what's not going well right now. So it's the remake from 2020. It portrays a dystopian city, I forgot the name, powered by Shinra, a corporation that extracts Mako, literally the planet's life force, to produce energy. And so yes, it is criticism of extractivism, fossil fuel, corporate control. So it is important to criticize this, what's not going well, but the problem is, fact of the matter is, social science says that when we talk about dystopias, especially in the context of ecological transition, it disempowers people. It makes them feel like there's no hope. It makes them, leaves them with fear. And fear doesn't move to action. And so it's super important to be aware of that, and what we definitely need a lot more is desirable future, positive visions of the future. And I want to share a little, research that I came across too, and I thought was super interesting, from some Swiss researchers. They asked students repeatedly across several years to write stories about the future. So the majority of students wrote dystopian stories, and some students wrote positive stories, so desirable futures. What really is interesting is that 80% of the dystopias were drawing references from culture, like books, movies, video games. And for the positive stories, only 20% were referencing pop culture. And you would say maybe that's because they had less, they had their own ideas. But the hypothesis of the researcher, which is corroborated by a lot of other research, is that actually it's because there's a lot more dystopias in our pop culture. Another interesting thing is that they noticed that people who wrote dystopias, they were rich in detail, they were very credible. The people who were writing the desirable stories, well, they were a little bit simplistic. It was like, it's all bad and now it's all good. It doesn't explain how we came there, and it's suddenly like everything is perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but it can be better, that's for sure. And what it told them, and what was interesting also, is that they saw across the year degradation of that. More and more the positive story were becoming less and less rich and less credible. So it seems we have difficulties to imagine what a future possible future could be. And so that's even more important that we get to it, that we start to work towards our objective. So, moving forward, so what we wanted to do with Pedro, who's in the room and is hiding, is letting me alone, carrying the weight of that. We wanted to provide the knowledge and the tool for video game creators to support ecological transition. Because it's not as intuitive. I'm sure there's all well-meaning people who say, well, this topic is I'm going to create a very believable world where we can criticize about the current system. Yes, but we definitely very mostly need to talk about what can we do instead. Because if we don't start describing it, then we won't be able to collectively talk about it and make it happen. So, the program. So there's two parts to the program, which is obviously mixed across the week. There's one part which is increasing the knowledge and raise consciousness on ecological transition and how to move people forward and how to talk about it. There's 4 pillars which I'm going to detail in a minute. And then there's putting that into practice, because saying it is good, but it's very abstract, and even now I'm going to talk about it, you're going to maybe feel it's very abstract. So the video game practice, we have additional talks from video game professionals on very specific topic, linking also with some of the topic that is, I present myself. So what do I talk about? Because that's my part here. And I'm just going to move forward to my notes here, although I know my program by heart, of course, but there's too many things to say, so I'm going to try to keep on point. First, we talk about Earth, where we're living. Sometimes we're a little bit too remote from that, and we need to understand a little bit more what it is. So we talk about how it's rich, complex, interconnected. It doesn't need us to keep in balance. Actually, as a matter of fact, we have a tendency to put it out of balance. And because we create sort of issues in this ecosystem where we live in, it tends to create cascade issues, and that becomes more and more difficult to solve. And so we talk about what sort of thinking do we need to develop in order to solve that issue, how to better manage our ecosystem. We talk about also the fact that there are key conditions on the Earth that sustain the perfect conditions for us humans to thrive and our societies to thrive, and that we need to keep that in line of sight. So the question is, how do we make sure that we live within those planetary boundaries? And therefore we talk about also what sort of societies and economies do we need to develop in order to stay within the planetary boundaries. And a very strong message, because sometimes when we talk about the system we feel overwhelmed, we're like, do anything, I'm just one actor. And it's totally true, but at the same time, the system is designed by people, so it can be redesigned by people. And as a matter of fact, you being in a video game, you design systems all the time. So what you show in the system, it's up to you. And you can decide to show things that are not today the norm, but could be the norm tomorrow. So, I'll give you a little example. You just say, maybe you're crazy, not Grand Theft Auto? Yes, imagine Grand Theft Auto, okay? You keep the doubtful moral of the characters, you keep the car theft, you keep the high-speed chases, the violence, the social satire, of course, and the freedom of action. You keep all of that. It doesn't have to go away. You know, that's the DNA, don't touch it. But you can change everything else in the background, okay? So you can make Grand Theft Auto in a totally different society, it's up to you. And it would be really cool to change the norms that are in this world. So I took very obvious things to make it relatable, but hey, maybe the characters now they're stealing really cool electric cars, because there's only electric cars nowadays, but there's really cool ones. They go super fast as well, by the way. The criminal activities are popular, have evolved. Now you resell stolen electric bicycles because everyone has one, but the electric ones are cooler than the non-electric ones. And you're trafficking batteries and rare metals, and you're hijacking mobility services. And also the landscapes could have evolved. We could show how we have adapted to extreme weather or recurrent floodings, and portray resilient communities that do a great job at supporting societies. No, I'm here. We also talk about the human factor. What the hell is that? The human factor is us, what we do, and the behavior So, as I said, it's difficult to, for individuals, human beings, to change, but we can hack that. You know, we're hackable. And so we talk about the psychology, the brain, also about our evolutionary behaviors that made us such a thriving species. And we talk about all the social cues that we scan every time we are in society, and we're like, okay, should I do it or should I not do it? You know, should I be the one doing this or should I wait everybody else to do it first? Huh? And that's kind of the sort of issues we see in ecological transition. So the idea is to talk about that, to discuss it, and how we can apply some of those principles in video game. And creating, therefore, meaningful experiences that actually can create, action. We talked about the imaginaries with the dystopies, and actually one author that I like, called Rob Hopkins, he says that in his perspective there's a genuine crisis of imagination. So you're in a video game industry, nah, never, I don't believe you. But in a way, maybe it's not wrong when we see the experiment with the positive features. So I think a way to see it is that we have become highly skilled at talking about dystopias, imagining dystopias, and we need to become as highly skilled talking about futures, desirable futures. And actually there's also a lot of people who actually thinking about what could be a desirable future. Economists, designers, urbanists, architects, there's researchers, all sorts of people who try to do that. And if you have difficulties to envision it, you can draw inspiration from these people, or even better, give them a voice, work with them, because they have a lot to say too. And and the role of video game in all of that is not only showcasing those imaginaries, these possibilities, and putting them into storytelling, but also allowing to experience them, to basically experiment things, build new skills, and to be confronted to things that they had never imagined, and suddenly asking new questions and maybe wanting to experiment it in real life. So I see the video game as having the power to be a sort of laboratory, and and actually, for those who are on the program, you don't know it yet, but tomorrow you're going to be doing an hour activity where you're actually going to write your own positive, desirable future. So stay tuned for that. And for those who are like, yeah, I would love to do that, well, just give us a shot. And the last aspect I want to mention is we also need to restore our relationship with nature. Especially if you live in a big city, like I do, and Santiago is a big city too, we tend to be cut off from nature. And some people don't even know what the name of vegetables are. And this is what feeds you, you rely on that. So we have grown a difficult relationship with nature, and it tends to be either a backdrop, it's a nice landscape, or we're exploiting it. And I know that's the purpose of the game, but a game like Civilization, the whole purpose is to extract resources in order to grow societies. So it shows the sort of mindset that we may have around nature. Someone that I read said, we need to fall back in love with nature, because when we love, we do extraordinary things. And I think video game can help also to fall back in love with nature. And also I wanted to share a little personal reflection. A few months ago in France, a news bugged very much, and I don't know if you heard about that in Chile. Apparently there was an Argentinian a live feed of exploration of the seabed off the coast of Argentina. And apparently a lot of Argentinians became completely addicted to that live feed. And this is crazy because it has no storytelling, no visual effects, it's just a live feed with nothing else, and people kept coming back. They were like totally hooked and excited about it. And I thought, what a great phenomenon. I would love to understand what made people come back and how can we use that in a video game? Because that's great, that's a great start to connect back people with nature and make them care about nature. Because we tremendously need people to care, more people to care about nature. So enough about the theory, but when we put a practice, what do we do? So I said there was a lot of talks, and actually I realized I didn't say what the talks were early on, but I will say from the top of my head. There's talk about game production, data, the AI, there's Pedro who represents, talks about how to represent non-humans. There's also someone from the International Game Developer Association who's going to talk about some of the work that they did and also how to work with indigenous people. So all sorts of topics are covered. Also, and most importantly, sorry, that's after my slides, sorry, I'm moving ahead of... one thing that we talk about, unfortunately briefly, but the video is online on the internet for everybody, is a climate toolkit from my colleague, Arnaud Fayol, who's art director at Ubisoft, and who's extremely committed to ecological transition. He's actually the co-chair of the climate group at the International Game Developer Association. And this toolkit is basically showing all of the leverages that a team has to align video games with the ecological transitions. And what is interesting here is it shows that everyone has a role to play. Really, everyone has a role to play, like from data to coding to art to storytelling to game mechanics and so on and so forth. And I want to insist on that because in a team of, I don't know, like let's say even 10, it's too many. If in a team of 10 only one person is sensitive to this is not enough to actually change the game. Okay? So we need more people to have a certain amount of knowledge and consciousness about that. Just wanting to is not enough. If you're interested in more resources, I can recommend you the Playing for the Planet website, which has interesting resources. The latest one is Beyond the Endgame, where you will find the business case of Never Alone, but also other games along that. They also have a carbon calculator, and also I want to push for the great work of the International Developer Association. They have a developer's guide, which is quite accessible. And they have, for game designer, a very thorough playbook with very specific tactics, very practical, so do not hesitate to go and check it out. And that was what I wanted to say everyone. Most importantly, there's a collective project to put in practice as much as the team has, and with the support of mentors from the game industry. To conclude, I want to say again and insist that video game has a tremendous potential, and this is not just for big video game companies, really. You know, every single person here with passion, with skills and understanding of what will make a difference, can make a difference. And I wanted to talk about what is his name? Claire Obscure Expedition 33, because I think this is it's not in the sustainability side, I gave it to you, but it's a very good example of a team, small team, full of passion, some people not even being professionals, official professionals, they were skilled nevertheless, from all across the world, gathering for, attain the same objective, and he did a great job, and this is not a big company, but it was the same level. And Never Alone is also a formidable example on the sustainability side. So, yes, you also have a role to play. Thank you.
Yep. Emilie, a pleasure. First of all, thank you for the presentations, thank you for the trip. From your point of view, what are the current constraints that you face when you're working for human resources at your scale? It's a very practical one. Versus obviously all the environmental impact, which is incredible. Thank you for all the work.
Okay, so it's general HR. Compared to Oliver? Okay, I hope I understand the question right. If not, I'm so sorry. So for me, human resources, well, it's going to be really standard what I'm going to say is make sure that we have the right people in the right place at the right time. But right now, I think what it really is important for us is to anticipate what's coming in terms of evolution of skills, evolution of work, and make sure that we support people in changing. So talking about change, we're in a different area. Because as I said, change is not that easy, and it's going fast. So how can we anticipate that, give the tools so that everybody remains relevant on the job market? So that's one of the parts. And on the sustainability side, I think if we're taking from an HR perspective, okay, it's also making sure that we give opportunities for people to develop their skills. And it's also why I was sensitive to the offer of Pedro to collaborate on this. It's, let's be honest, it's not the major topic for companies. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to have money and to continue operating, and the topics such as ecological transition is challenging for everybody. And so I don't necessarily get as much time as I would like to develop the topic, but that's why this opportunity is great, because it gives me an opportunity to take time and to actually start building contents and activities that can support everybody. So I hope I answered the question. Sorry about that. One question.
Hi, Emilie, I'm Fisher. What is your opinion on companies? What are companies doing to push this positive perspective of the future closer to our generation of young adults? Since it feels that it's a kind of children's thing when, you know, the content that we are fed as kids is usually about saving the planet, like keeping save water, keep electricity down, stuff like that. But as we grow old, usually the content we consume becomes darker. What are the companies doing to put this perspective or a positive future closer to our younger generation, us young adults?
First of all, thank you, and I saw that was a really important issue for you. Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's a change for everybody, including for companies, because companies are made of humans. So we're looking back on the topic, right? And that's why today it's so important that we're getting the space to actually push it. And I will continue to push the topic forward. And I hope that more and more people will do also within this industry. So there's people who do a great job, and I invite you to go and check the Play for the Planet, which lists a lot of games that are good examples. So there are people, I didn't mention, but there's another game where they clearly specifically worked with scientists, specialists to build really credible games about that. So let's be patient. I know that time is hurrying up, but there are people who are doing that, and I agree with you, there's not enough. So I wish I had a better answer. Muchísimas gracias.